Today's topic is on A/B testing. We're going to go through some of our experiences and how we structure A/B tests here based on the probably hundreds of A/B tests we've done over the years and help you execute some more successful A/B tests yourself. So a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, please do post questions into the chat. You can do that whether you're joining us through Zoom or the live stream. Either way, we will respond to your questions either as they come in or at the end during our Q&A. Please write them down while they're top of mind so that you're not forgetting them later. Second, a copy of these slides will be emailed to you. If you are joining through Zoom, that means that we know that you're here and we will send them to you automatically. If you're joining through the live stream, there will be an opportunity to scan a QR code at the end. A little bit about me. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO here at Brilliant Metrics. I started my career in software development, but spent the last 20 years or so in marketing. So I may dive a little bit into the geek end of A/B testing, but I'll probably try to leave things a little high level. In addition to my role at Brilliant Metrics, I'm a public speaker. I teach some classes with UWM School of Continuing Ed. And on the personal side, I'm married to a lovely woman named Kim and have three kids that, well, they drive me a little crazy, but I love them too. Brilliant Metrics. We are a B2B strategic marketing firm. Our clients are largely in manufacturing, some SaaS, some professional services, and they consider us they consider us their agency of record, and they rely on us to break through to the next level. All right. Plug aside, there is one more shameless plug later, but don't worry, most of this is really valuable content. The agenda, we're going to talk through the what and the why of A/B testing. We'll talk about the two core types of tests. We call them spaghetti and insight tests. Talk a little bit about sample sizes and what to look for there. Confidence calculations to know whether or not your test was a fluke. And then finally, a little bit about where you run your test in platform versus looking at that data externally. All right, the what and the why of A/B testing. When we talk about an A/B test, it's really just two different versions of either creative or content. And you're presenting these two different versions to determine which one works better so that you can run the winning version over time. But also, ideally, you're going to take some takeaways from this test, some insights that you can apply elsewhere in your marketing. So I mentioned it can be creative or content. Really, these are two different types of A/B testing as far as like we're two different places you can do A/B testing. And because of that, you're going to have a different set of tools. If I'm running a creative test, it means that I'm running that test on the ad platforms or the places that that creative is running. Now, that could be Google Ads, it could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn, it could be postcards or direct mail. It's two different instances of creative with the same objective appearing in the same place. If I'm running a content A/B test, in that instance, I've got it's on an owned property. It's on a website. It's on a microsite. It is a landing page. It is something that I own and I can manipulate. And I'm presenting two different versions of that landing page or that blog post or that product page or home page to different sets of people. The tools are different depending on what it is you're doing. So for example, if I'm running creative, I'm going to have to set up that test inside of the creative platform that I'm running it on. So that could be a Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google Ads or Campaign Manager 360. And then I have to measure the response. Now I can measure the response directly in the platform. There are ways to do that. We'll talk about that later today. Or I can measure the response in Google Analytics. Either one is valid, or I can do both. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that as we get a little bit further. Content's a little bit different though. Here, I can't just create two versions of my blog post. I really need to have some sort of a tool to go and flip back and forth between version A and version B. And so the tools that we have used over the years have varied. We used to use a tool called Google Optimize for this because it was free, but Google sunsetted that platform last year. So since that time, we've flipped over to Crazy Egg being our primary tool for running A/B tests when we are running A/B tests on page with clients. Other alternatives include Optimizely, which is one of the core players in this space, as well as VWO or Visual Web Optimizer. Those are both great platforms. They're going to be more expensive than Crazy Egg, and Crazy Egg does the job, so that's why we default to that. Now, to measure the results of your A/B test, you can do that both within the Crazy Egg, Optimizely, or VWO tool, or you can do it in Google Analytics, or you really should be doing both because you really want to understand some of the subtleties of the differences in that traffic and what they do after you've presented them with that landing page, depending on how you've made that change, those changes. So why is A/B testing so valuable? Well, if you look here, I just kind of made up some data here. Month one, let's say we had 100 sales. We run an A/B test, we get a 3% lift off of that A/B test. Well, now the next month, we get 103 sales. And then we run another test, we get 7% improvement, we get 110 sales, and so on and so on. This starts to really look like compounding interest, and it's really the same concept. So when you're running A/B tests on a regular basis, you're incrementally improving your results, and those incremental improvements stack on each other. This 7% improvement receives the benefit of the 3% here. This 4% improvement receives the benefit of the 7 and 3% here. And so over time, this can really add up to the point you can get 20, 30, 50, 100% lift over a period of time. Second, depending on the types of tests that you're running, we'll get into that in a minute, these insights can also start to stack up, and you can learn more and more about your audience and apply those learnings across multiple different mediums. That learning improves not just the place that you're doing the test, but also every other bit of marketing that's touching that same audience with the same or similar offer. It really improves your starting points for all of your new marketing efforts in the future. And finally, and this is key, if you're not growing, you're dying when it comes to marketing. In other words, if you're not doing something to continuously improve and iterate, and it doesn't have to be A/B testing. We don't run A/B testing all the time with all clients right now, but we are doing something to continuously improve all the time because there will be attrition. There will be platforms. There will be technology changes. Right now, we're looking at the death of cookies. That's a huge impact on a lot of the digital advertising we're doing right now. We have to compensate for that with improvements and optimizations through other channels because over time things degrade, they break down, they fall apart, the world moves. And if you aren't growing, if you aren't continuously improving, the only direction you can really go is down. All right, let's talk about the two different types of A/B tests. We call them here at Brilliant Metrics spaghetti and insights. I don't know if what the rest of the industry really calls them. I haven't seen good monikers or names for this, so this is how we end up with these terms internally. But these two are two different types of A/B tests that you can run in different contexts. When we talk about a spaghetti test, it's a reference to the phrase throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. In these tests, we're throwing two completely different creative executions or landing page executions, right? They're very different. And our goal is to just find out what's going to get a better, or in some cases, any response. These are perfect for when you're starting from zero or near zero, when you don't have a lot of conversions on the current creative or page. The problem is you may get a lift, but you have no idea why. So to see why, well, this is an example, a hypothetical example. We didn't run this test of what a spaghetti test example would look like for the landing page where you registered for this webinar. So if you look at these two different executions here, this is the one that you use to register. This is a radically different version that could be out there. If let's just say version B over here wins, we don't know if it's because we changed the call to action on the form. We don't know if it's because we moved the form down. We don't know if it's because the image is smaller and the text is at the forefront. We don't know if it's because the title is bigger and we dropped the live webinar. Any of those changes could have contributed to the improvement in version B versus version A. If those changes stacked and work together to improve the outcome, you'll often see a greater lift with a spaghetti test than you will with an insight test, which we'll show you in a second. Sometimes those changes can sort of counteract each other, and an improvement here in this title could be counteracted by a drop from the form, in which case you get less of a lift than you would by running these tests individually. But the big thing is, if B beat A or A beat B, you don't know why. Great if you're just trying to get started and get those numbers up, but not good. If you've got volume, you're much better off running an insight test. So let's look at an insight test here. So an insight test, you're going to change one thing and one thing only. And the reason why you're changing one thing and one thing only is because you want to test a hypothesis that you have about your audience. Ideally about your audience, not about the page, about the audience. Because if you test a hypothesis about your audience, you come away from that A/B test, not only with an improvement in your results, but also with an insight, just a nugget of knowledge that then you can go and apply elsewhere in your marketing. If you change 5 things, you don't have an opportunity to come away with that knowledge. If you change one thing, then you come away with that knowledge that that one thing matters. Or it doesn't, which can be valuable in its own right. We'll talk about that in a minute. So here's an example of, again, messing with the landing page for this webinar, but this time we're looking at it from an insight perspective. And I have an hypothesis that listing the key takeaways above the registration form will increase signups. Really, my hypothesis about my audience is that moving those key takeaways front and center and requiring less reading for people to understand them will improve people taking us up on offers for our webinars. So if we see that B beats A by a margin that is statistically significant, which we'll talk about later, then we know that that listing the takeaways separately is really valuable. And we can do this not only on the landing page, but we could do this with the postcard that we mail about our webinars sometimes. We can do this with the social posts and put those key takeaways front and center in those social posts. There's a lot of ways that we can take the same learning and apply it elsewhere. So let's jump into how you set up a good A/B test. The first thing you want to make sure is this A/B test even feasible? Am I going to come away with a good result here? The first thing you want to check there is the sample size. So the way to think about this is if I have a small sample, meaning there is a small number of people that are going to see my ad, or there's a small number of visitors to my landing page or web page, and the impact of my change, A versus B, is subtle, I'm probably not going to be able to replicate any result I get. A might beat B or B might beat A today in the test I just ran. But if I rerun that test again next week, I'll get a completely different result. Because when sample sizes are small and the impact is subtle, uh, a lot of it just comes down to chance. You know, did people click on this and happen to be feeling happy that day? Did the 5 people who got version A versus the 5 people that got version B, did they just happen to be people who were more motivated or more interested in your offer? The problem with small sample sizes is you don't really know, unless the impact of your change is huge. So if you have 5 people who clicked on version A and 5 people who clicked on version B, and everyone in version A converted and nobody in version B converted, now you start to potentially have a statistically significant result, even though you only have 5 people. Conversely, if you have a really large sample, thousands and thousands and thousands of people who saw your ad, or thousands and thousands and thousands of people that visited your webpage, and you have a very subtle impact of 1 or 2% change, you can still have a replicatable or replicable result. You can run that test again and you'll get the same result because you have enough data to validate that very subtle improvement. Obviously, if you have a large sample and a large impact, that's going to be replicable. I didn't include it in the slide because that's If these two are true, then the third one is obviously true. But your goal here is to make sure that your test either has a huge impact or has a large enough sample that it's worth running. So how do you estimate that? Well, this is where a sample size calculator comes into play. And I wish this were an exact science. I wish you could put your stuff in here and it'll tell you, yes, you're going to get a result, or no, you won't. But one of the inputs in here is really gut. And that's the best we can do, because kind of got to predict the future a little bit. So the three main inputs, this is the sample size calculator from Optimizely, by the way. Someday we'll build one on our website, but we haven't gotten to that yet. You can get to it through this short URL here, brlnt.co/sscalc. Um, Inside of the sample size calculator, there are three inputs and one output. The first input is your current conversion rate. So if I'm doing this on a creative side, for X number of impressions, I will get Y number of either clicks or conversions or engaged sessions or whatever my positive metric I want to use. So you take your outcomes divided by your impressions or inputs, and you get your conversion rate. If I'm testing a landing page, it's going to be for X number of visitors, I get Y conversions. So you're going to calculate that conversion rate and put it here. The next input is the gut one. This is your expected lift. If you're making a slight tweak, your detectable effect that you're expecting is probably going to be a 2% lift, 5% lift. It's not going to be much. If you're making a huge change, like the title of the webinar or the blog post, or if you're making a huge change on um, what the primary call to action is, or what the primary sense of urgency that you're creating is, something you're expecting to have a sizable impact, you can put 20% here. I wouldn't go much above 20%, because then you start getting into like your moonshot A/B tests where like changing something small has some really giant impact. But 20-25%, maybe, if you're really confident it's going to make some waves. It really depends on your gut as a marketer on what kind of impact you expect the change that you're making to have. And then finally, just keep the statistical significance at 95%. That's best practice. Dropping that will drop your sample size needed, but really, if you get down to even 90%, that means 1 in 10 times that you run this experiment, it's going to come out wrong. Is that really enough for you to change the way that you're marketing from this date forward? Probably not. Um, so best practice is to keep this at 95. That means that, you've got a 1 in 20 chance that your result you got from your experiment is wrong. So based on this, it'll give you back a number. This sample size calculator gives you a number per variant. So you need to double this number to know exactly how many impressions you need to drive on that creative, or how many visitors you need to drive on that landing page or page. If you project out and it will take you longer than 3 months to drive this much traffic, don't run the test. You won't get a conclusive result. You don't want to leave an A/B test out there for much longer than 3 months anyway, because what starts to happen is the audience starts to drift in their response, and it ends up muddying or dirtying the test. If you do get a conclusive result, it's not really conclusive because something else impacted it. So look at what you can drive traffic wise in about 3 months. If that number is at or above double this, then run the test. If it's not, then don't run the test. Oh, one more last little input. Sometimes, especially if you're doing a landing page test, um, if you want to test your hard conversions, whether somebody submitted the form to become a lead, that may not be your best lever, because your conversion rate on that might only be 1%, which is going to drive your sample size through the roof. Sometimes a better metric might be Did they scroll down to a particular area and hover on it long enough? There's a really cool trigger you can put in Google Tag Manager to detect that. If they got down to the form on the page and stayed there for a couple seconds. Um, Something like that. Or if you're testing content, did they scroll depth or watching a video all the way through, and other things like that are a lot easier to test than your hard conversions, especially in B2B with a high dollar value sale. You just don't get enough leads in order to make an A/B test statistically significant. So get creative and figure out what other conversion could you test that tells you you're getting the right people to the page and you're engaging them. That may be a better way to run an A/B test for a landing page. Okay, analyzing the results. So you ran your test and you know how many conversions you got on A and you know how many conversions you got on B. But there really wasn't a lift. A and B are neck and neck, or not really very far apart at all, right? That isn't necessarily an outcome that can't teach you something. You can learn from that outcome. What that means is it doesn't matter. Whatever you changed doesn't make a difference. It's not going to hurt you any more than it's going to help you. That is knowledge in and of itself. And we often forget that. We see that, oh, my change didn't have a lift. But that actually frees you. You now have two options where you can do version A or version B and know that it's not going to hurt you either. So when that happens, it's essentially a permission slip. Here, you can go and do A or you can do B as a marketer and safely move forward without worrying about hurting something, which means you can pick version A or version B based on what you know about your audience or what you know about your business objectives, and choose the version that better serves the audience, preferably, or better serves the business objectives. So, for example, if putting a pop-up on the page doesn't result in a lift in conversions, well, then don't put a pop-up on the page. Nobody likes pop-ups. Pop-up only hurts your brand reputation. It doesn't add value to the user. Take the pop-up off. You were just given permission to remove the pop-up risk-free because you did a test that proved that it was not adding any value. So a non-result here is actually a good thing when you get the test back neck and neck. That said, if it's not neck and neck and you don't have an even result, A versus B, now you need to know, was the result statistically significant? So we saw a 10% lift or a 20% lift with version B. Was that a fluke? If I ran this test again, would it come out the same way? So that's where your confidence calculator comes in. And this one, we do have a really nice, easy to use one on the Brilliant Metrics website. If you go to brilliant.co/confidence, you can get to it. You can put in simply the number of impressions for your control and the number of impressions for your variant. Or if this is a landing page test, you're looking at the number of sessions for the control and the number of sessions for your variant. And then the number of positive outcomes. Could be clicks, could be conversions, could be whatever it is you're shooting for as that positive outcome over here for version A and for version B. And then it'll tell you right down here which one won and at what confidence level. You want to shoot for a 95% confidence. That means if you ran this test 100 times, 5 of those might come out wrong like this, right? It's saying that you can with 95% certainty say that your result was not a fluke. That's what you want before you go and take this knowledge to the bank. One final note, I said there was going to be another shameless plug. Noise kills A/B tests. If you have a lot of either clicks on your ads that are bots, if you're testing two different creatives, or sessions on your landing page that are bots, if you're testing a landing page, the bots don't care whether it's version A or version B. They will act exactly the same way. That drops your statistical confidence in whatever results you were going to get. And so you need a tool like Bot Badger to filter out that noise, or your A/B testing will not work. We know that's part of why we built Bot Badger. So again, shameless plug, this is our product, but it's really important to get that noise out of your A/B tests. All right, in platform versus external. So if I test creative, I can test it in the platform that I'm running the creative on and set up my A/B test there, or I can set up my A/B test in the platform and measure it in Google Analytics, or I can kind of do both. So I'm going to go good, better, best here. Good. In most of these platforms, you can simply say, I want to run 3 different creatives, and then you pick the winner and continue running that creative, into the sunset. Most of the time in most of these platforms, that's just the default setup when you upload multiple creatives for the same um, ad set, campaign, ad group, whatever it's called in that platform. There are a couple of caveats though. When you do this, it's usually just going to optimize on clicks. Maybe you can get it to optimize on conversions. But either way, you don't have a lot of control over the quality of those clicks or knowledge of the quality of those clicks or those conversions. It's hard to analyze the result of this test beyond, okay, we got more of the good thing with version A than we did with version B, but you don't know if there were any trade-offs to that. So for example, if you're even if you're optimizing on conversions and it's a lead generation thing and people are filling out a form, what you don't know if it's attracting the right people filling out that form, if you don't have some other way of tracking this further downstream. Second, a lot of these platforms, when you say, I'm going to load up 2 different creatives, you pick the winner, the platform doesn't always go to 95% confidence. Now, in some cases, like Meta, when you load multiple creatives in Meta and let it pick a winner, sometimes it's picking that winner based on things that you can't see, like dwell time as it's coming through the feed. So in that case, it's kind of okay. It's better than nothing. But other platforms, they'll pick a winner at 80% confidence and or will start diverting impressions over to the winner at 80% confidence because in their mind, they don't necessarily assume you're taking knowledge away from this particular experiment to go and apply elsewhere in your marketing. They just want to get you to the best performance the fastest so you continue running ads on their platform. So sometimes it's better to not set it up so that the platform picks the winner and tell the platform to run the ads evenly. That can be done if you set up an A/B test. That can also be done with multiple different creatives. A lot of these platforms actually have baked in A/B testing capabilities. Sometimes here you can set a confidence threshold. Sometimes you can't. Um, Again, you're going to only be able to see if you're doing all your analysis only in that platform and nothing over on like Google Analytics. You're only going to be able to see the quantity of positive outcomes. You won't be able to see anything quantitative or qualitative on that those positive outcomes. So your best bet, again, we'll get to best, is to include some Google Analytics there. One advantage of using the A/B testing capabilities built into the ad platform is much like if you were to run a landing page test with an Optimizely or a Crazy Egg. Those platforms make sure that if you've got Joe and Mary, and Joe comes to the website and gets version A, and then Mary comes to the website and gets version B, and then 2 days later Joe comes back, those platforms make sure that Joe sees A again and doesn't magically jump over to B. And they make sure that Mary sees B again and she doesn't jump that magically over to A. The ad platforms do the same thing. They'll show version A of your creative to Joe, and then the next time they show creative to Joe, they're going to show version A again. And they'll show version B to Mary. And the next time they show to creative, they'll show B to Mary again. And that can improve the probability that you get a statistically significant outcome because it could be that there's messaging in A that causes somebody more likely to act with B or vice versa. So if you have built-in A/B testing capabilities in the platform that you're running, and you still don't want to go as far as to tag everything to get it to work right in Google Analytics, better than just uploading 2 creatives and saying pick the winner is to use the A/B test capability right there in the platform. The best, however, is to use that A/B test capability. Ideally, set a statistical confidence for the test yourself at 95% or tell it to run both indefinitely, and then measure your results in Google Analytics, because then you can see some of the more subtle differences between that traffic. This also means tagging your URLs so that you can separate out the two of them. So there's a UTM content parameter that appears inside of a URL string that if you sent that to A and B, now you can go and separate out the traffic that came from version A from the traffic that came from version B. This is hugely valuable in being able to do that analysis on what level of quality the traffic that you got from version A versus version B. You can look at engagement rate, you can look at conversion rates, you can look at other metrics of site traffic quality. You can also, if you're really good, pass that information into the form that they're filling out. And I'll be able to look at, if you're getting form fills off of this, what the form fills look like for version A versus version B, and go down and drill down to an individual level. So I strongly recommend tagging the URLs of version A and version B differently so you can analyze that data better in Google Analytics and possibly in other platforms or in the actual leads or sales that you're getting back out, so that you know you're not just assuming because version A ran and delivered me more conversions that it's better, because it could have delivered you more conversions, but they could be junk. So I hope that makes sense. In summary, there are two types of A/B tests. Spaghetti tests, if you're starting from zero or really low numbers and you want to do your best to get a conclusive test to get those numbers up, start with a spaghetti test. Otherwise, test for insight. Have a hypothesis, change one thing and one thing only, and learn something from your A/B tests that you can apply in other marketing. Sample sizes are important. Don't bother running a test that isn't going to produce a successful outcome. I said we don't run A/B tests for all of our clients. This is the primary reason why, is because there are limits to where we can run an A/B test. And the more personalization, the more narrow your audience is, and the more targeted and personalized your content is, the less opportunities you have for running A/B tests. But the benefit of that personalization and that zeroing in often outweighs the lift that you get from the A/B tests anyway. So do something to continuously improve. It doesn't have to be A/B tests, and don't run A/B tests if you're not going to be able to have a large enough sample to get a statistically valid result. When you run your test, don't run with your result before you check the confidence on it. Use an A/B testing confidence calculator or significance calculator to go and figure out what that confidence level is. If it's below 95%, okay, run with the one that's the winner, but don't take away any insights, because you can't know for a fact that that test is replicable. Finally, test quantity and quality. This is important in how you structure your A/B tests in creative, but it's also important in how you analyze your results for landing page and web page tests. Look in analytics at what happened after the conversion, because oftentimes it's easy to get worse conversions. It's easier to get worse conversions, and an optimization that you make in version B can do exactly that. Drive a higher volume of garbage. So always check your quality as well as your quantity. And with that, I have not seen any questions in either of the chats. So I'll give you just a minute here to pop a question in while we're doing that. If you don't have a question, please do follow us on LinkedIn for more great content like this. If you're coming in through the live stream, go ahead and grab that request slides and recording and fill out that form, and we'll get you a copy of these slides. Any questions from anyone? Okay, great. We ran a little long today, so I am not going to sit around waiting for somebody to think something up. If you have any questions, please do reach out to me or to us. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day.